Look at that Icat pattern dance. We also saw twill being woven, which gives warp floats, of course, and lays more uninterrupted silk across the surface of the cloth. This was the only time I saw a man at a loom. He was considerably slower than the ladies that I'd watched. Here's a hot tip if you're visiting weavers in far-flung countries. Always pack a tablet weaving warp. It's a great way to communicate with local weavers when you're trying to talk outside of your language group. Now, because 300 meters of silk Icat warp is not complex enough, let's talk about velvet. That's the cloth she's weaving. Some sket, no? Now, many people have seen how a velvet loom works in the US or in Italy. They're very complex. Every single warp thread is on a separate bobbin and individually braked so that the pile warp is under its own tension and can undulate around the channels that form the pile. I've seen velvet looms in action. I always assumed that this was how it had to be done to get velvet. Complex engineered loom. I was wrong. Here are her two warps. Her Icatted silk warp on the top, and her orange structural warp on the bottom. Both of them headed toward her beater. And here on the far side of the room, this is how the warps are weighted. Can you see what she's doing? While weaving, she shoots a pick of structural weft, interlacing with the structural warp to make the cloth. But then in addition, she also lays a piece of wire under the supplemental Icatted warp. And she does this for a good safe distance, say 7 to 8 inches, before she shaves off the fragile silk from the top of each and every wire. This is how she gets the pile of the velvet.
The word to cut is right for this process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Adres kartı sorun için ama ben
handcrafted cloth. And this is the resulting velvet. Still the best sket I saw while in Uzbekistan. Here I'd like to introduce you to Russell John, the director of the Ickat workshop that we visited. He's not only the director of the workshop, but hosted us as well in his home in the Fergana Valley. This is where we had breakfast in Margalan every morning. That's a tapchan that we're sitting on, a raised sitting frame with a low table in the center used for eating, playing backgammon, drinking green tea, and conversation with friends. Ickat is used all over Russell John's small hotel, from quilts to curtains to pillowcases. I could never cut up that cloth into tiny pieces. One afternoon, he brought out the precious sketches that his father had made and told us this story. His father was a 9th-generation Ickat dyer who, during the Soviet times, was assigned a different job, one far away from working with Ickat. He was allowed to play with dyeing and weaving for himself in his free time, but the authorities thought he was making too much for his own use, and he was imprisoned by the USSR for individual enterprise. Speaking of the USSR, there was Ickat made during that era, in factories, by employees, by people who had no heart for the cloth, who just did the steps as part of their workday. You can still find examples of this sad Ickat in the flea market. Yes, it is true thread Ickat, but give me a break. Contrast that to what's available now, with people who are passionate about Ickat back in charge of the production. Okay, let's go shopping. This fabric beauty is available by the yard. Well, by the meter. In great variety for the discerning customer. We visited the market on Ickat Market Day in Margalan. And that entire day at the market, the whole day long, we saw a grand total of 2 other tourists, and those were from France. Americans are not well known here. In fact, one gal in her booth asked Azat where we were from, and when he told her America, she was surprised and exclaimed, "I thought Americans were black." This is not a tourist happening. This is a market for the locals, cloth production for the locals, Ickat for the Uzbeks. This is folk art. Of course, in addition to handcrafted cloth, there was also ready-made clothing for sale, and it goes without saying, hand-sewn. What fun it was to watch the ladies and the girls trying on outfits, looking for that special dress for that special occasion. Or even for every day. With the universal thrill we women all share when we find an outfit that makes us feel pretty. For the colder months, we have quilted Ikat robes. The older one, as seen in this museum, are lined with Russian broadcloth. And you can even find, among these lovely old gems, ones that are quilted by hand. Of course, we also have chop-on made out of velvet Ikat, complete with the requisite giak trim, hand-woven on tablets. And another traditional use for Ikat, patchwork quilts. Because there's not enough pattern in the cloth already. And it's not just for clothing. How about Ikat curtains? When I visited in 2017, Ikat production was strong and healthy, and I hope that continues. There is a danger these days, and it comes from China. Printed Ikat, available all over and cheaper than the handcrafted cloth, can be seen in Uzbekistan. Hey, it's cheaper, and so that's all you need, right? Wrong. There's something here that's real. That's valuable. A culture's history, the skill of the craftsman's hand, the humanity of the handmade. Honest cloth. The answer to keep it viable is to market this exceptional cloth to the outside world in upscale shopping venues. This cause got a great boost when Oscar de la Renta started featuring Uzbek cloth in his designs. Nowadays, ethnic is in. So what started out in Central Asia has found a new home in a wider world. Uzbek Ikat offers seamstresses a cloth with the uniqueness of a material completely made by human beings. A tradition steeped in history with a bright future of fashion. Now then, you've seen the secret behind the process of making Ikat cloth. Thank you for your attention, and Rahmat.